I mean, one thing that I thought was, I just actually want to understand myself is kind of, you wrote online that you kind of serve two main customers. So you said that PEO Italy, it's like either people who like want to enter the marketplace, the Italian marketplace, but they don't really know if they want to establish their own entity. And then some other ones, actual global companies who are hire remotely in Italy. Would you say, like, who would you say are your kind of ideal, like the people you can help the most?
It's um, it's a bit of a mix, really, Peter, right? So, the probably our main customer um, is a company that wants to hire in Italy because they want to expand their business in Italy. But before going and establish an entity, so invest in an endeavor that is going to require time and effort, they prefer to test the market using Peoitaly as the employer of record, right? So that is certainly probably the main scenario that we have, but also an important part of our employees, or actually our customers, are customers that happen to have the best employee ever sitting, actually living in Italy, or actually about to move to Italy. Therefore, where actually the client doesn't have an entity, right? Therefore, they need to use an employment agency as Pure Italy.
Do you get like a lot of, let's say I'm like a tech company in London and I just want some like good talent that maybe is, but I look around in London and maybe it's like a bit oversaturated or just a bit expensive for what I get in terms of talent. Do you have a lot of people like that who maybe want to hire one or two developers in Italy?
Yeah, we have a few actually. We have a few like that. So we have a few customers that we help with this type of service as well. So Italy is one of those countries there where there is a big mismatch between what is the offer and perhaps what is required by Italian companies. So the certainly we have a lot of um, um, young professionals that are extremely skilled, especially as you mentioned when it comes to software development, IT in general. I would say IT in general, yeah, so and actually customers either from the UK but also from many other countries, the US as well, Germany, they see Italy as a good pool of good resources, of good candidates, and that's why some of them use us for this reason indeed, yeah. And the good thing actually is that we not only we can employ them via our EUR employer record solutions, but we can also source candidates and for them, right? Whether then they want to hire them directly or via us, it doesn't matter. But we can find talents for them, as we do also have recruitment license.
That sounds really interesting. What's the kind of process of that look like? So let's say I was like, I've got a tech business and I just want to hire some good developers from Italy, but I don't even know where to start looking. How
Mhm.
would working with you look like in practice?
Sure. So usually what we do, we have an initial call with the client, with the prospect, and we carefully assess the business need, right? So we ask what kind of profile they're looking for, what kind of business it is, and what they need to those workers what they need to do, but also the background and so on. So we fully assess the business needs from a client. And then once we then send our proposal straight after the call, the initial call, and once the terms and conditions are agreed, we actually start selecting the person. And the added value of PO Italy, if compare our the way we do business with other international search and recruitment firms in general, is that we do speak the local language. I know that it's a kind of um, it doesn't sound surprising, but what I'm saying is that it is true that perhaps the candidates that eventually need to be hired, they must speak English, fine. However, the added value that we have just speaking the language of the person, the Italian person living in Italy, it does open us doors. It helps us to open doors that otherwise wouldn't be open with international recruitment companies.
Hmm. And one other thing I've heard is it seems quite difficult almost to get properly licensed in Italy.
Yeah,
Um, for like, what was the process of getting your license like, and why is
yeah.
it so important?
Sure. So actually, Italy is the country of licenses, as we like to say, right? You need a license for everything. It's just crazy. So when it comes to HR, there are a few licenses that you need to obtain if you want to operate in the industry. So the first one, and it's easiest to get, is the license to do recruitment. Yeah. So actually to select candidates on behalf of another company, not for yourself, obviously. So as a service, then you need a recruitment license. That is quite easy to obtain. You still need a minimum capital to put up front. And then you need to submit actually the procedure, a few, some paperwork to the Ministry of Labor. That's basically aimed to make sure that you can do the job, that you can do the job according to the law. And then the process takes approximately probably 3 or 4 months. The other license is much more difficult to obtain, is actually a labor leasing license, so to employ a worker on behalf of another company. That process is much longer. It does require a substantial capital in terms of euro. It does require a fideiussione, so actually a guarantee also from a bank. So you need to put down a deposit to the bank, which is also substantial. And also it does require a minimum number of employees that are qualified to do this job, and they're extremely selective at the Ministry of Labor um, to grant you, the permission based on the curricula of these employees. Actually, I'll just give you an example. When we applied for the license, we got it rejected the first time because one of our employees that I had to hire and that I made sure was qualified for the job. She had the right experience, but according to the Ministry of Labor, that was not enough. And it's one of those things, right? You have no real choice there. You have no real voice. So I actually to hire another person, which was not budgeted for, right? And but then we at the end we obtained. So it took us probably a year, a good year to obtain it at the end. Yeah.
Are there many businesses that have this license?
Many standard business. So like if you look, for example, Manpower, Adecco, Randstad, so they all have it, obviously, otherwise wouldn't be able to operate. But when it comes to companies that do what we do, employer record, really few of them.
That's quite cool. I think it's cool that you've like differentiated yourself like that. Um, so is it quite like a differentiating factor that you have all of these licenses?
Definitely. It's not only a piece of paper that you need to hang on the wall, which is mandatory, by the way. It's actually
Oh, really? That you have
it
to?
is. You need
No
to
way.
share. Yeah. It's not only a piece of paper, but it's actually a mandatory requirement. So this is something I always advise our prospects or clients. You don't necessarily need to choose Peoitaly, right? You can choose another provider, but what you need to make sure is that this provider that you're choosing is actually licensed. Yeah, that is mandatory. This is crucial if because using a provider that is not licensed, Piero, it's actually um, it's very it is dangerous in the sense that you're going to be exposed to a very high fine, which is up to 80,000 euros. but also it's the consequences that comes, from it. So first of all, the contract that was put in place. Let's say, you had this employee hired by an unlicensed, you are provided by for 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. This contract is null, is void. Okay, to start with. So then the company, then the non-Italian company must pay again the social security contributions from the beginning, although these contributions hopefully has been paid already by the other provider, right? But again, because the initial contract, the initial employment contract is void, and actually you need to have your own employment contract with the employee directly in that case. Then you need to start paying contribution from zero, right? So that is also
So you have to get like double taxed in a way, plus a fine.
double taxed plus a fine. Exactly, exactly. And then you have legal consequences connected to this. So it's not just that, right?
Like on the more positive side,
Mhm.
um, like what are I mean what are the benefits of kind of expanding into Italy and hiring in Italy?
Although Italy is one of these countries where social security contributions are the highest in Europe, so it's no reason to hide because that is the truth. We at the same time, the salaries of our professionals, so the people working in Italy, or actually the salary expectations are um, it tend to be lower than in other countries. Maybe it's not always the case, but tend to be lower in other countries. So overall, you might end up actually having, yes, having to pay, yes, high social security contribution, but overall a package that is lower than in other countries. So certainly for somebody that wants to pick the brain of some of the brightest people in Italy, that don't necessarily want to leave the country and work in the UK, in Germany, in the Netherlands, in the US, or so on, you can kind of you easily access this type of workforce remotely using a company like ours, right? And not and perhaps actually end up paying less than you would in your own country. That is certainly one reason. Or then again, perhaps if you want to explore the Italian market, right? And you don't necessarily want to set up your own entity straight away the first year, but perhaps wait for 1 or 2 years. We actually had a few clients that they started with us with our employer record solutions to test the market. Actually, a few good examples, and then after a while, they decided that, oh well, that's an interesting market. Let's actually open up an entity or a branch, um, and actually we were able to help them with that too, because we don't only offer employer record solutions or recruitment, but we also offer HR outsourcing services, right? So what we do, we introduce the company to the right notary, to the right accountant, to the right lawyer. Depends what they need, right? So each kind of company formation is a bit different. And we assist them. I like to say that we project manage the kind of phase, because we have this network of professionals with whom we work very well, right? So we project manage. We introduce it to, we facilitate all step by step, and then once the company is formed, our job is actually to assist the clients with HR outsourcing service. So you need to choose, first thing first, you need to choose the CBA, collective bargaining agreement, which in Italy is called CCNL, based on what you do. You need to write, offer letter or perhaps straight away employment contracts. And then employees have questions when receive this employment contract, which you need to answer based on the local labor law, and that's what we do, right? So we consider this kind of solution as the local virtual HR office for the client, and the benefits for the client are clear, right? So consider that if you need to hire a local HR expert, you would pay what, roughly, a gross salary of 40K, a good one, not necessarily extremely senior, but On top, you need to add 40% employer's cost, so you would see that the cost is quite high, and we can do with a fraction of that, amount. We can actually do the same job, actually even better job, because we have a team of people, right, which specialize on a specific part of the employment law. And also, you need to consider something else, that hiring a one person, an HR expert, it does not cover you for all the payroll related tasks, because payroll is not HR, right? So it's included, sometimes it's considered part of HR, but it's not. So that you still need perhaps to hire two people and not just one. So obviously, yeah. So obviously, it does not make any sense unless you reach probably a threshold of 20 people, 30 people in Italy. Then probably makes sense to have your own HR local office.
Yeah, so you basically get like all the benefits, but at a fraction of the cost and probably a fraction of the headache, right? Because this is
Correct.
all you do each day.
Exactly, exactly. And then what we like to do, we like to say that what we like to say actually is to make your life of our clients easier, because when an Italian employee asks you a question, they do it based on the local law, and they ask you for a reason most of the time, right? I just to give you an example, 13 salary, 14 salary, can I get this paid monthly? Oh, well, yes, but there is always a but. Or, in Italy, we like to complicate things, right? So we do have vacation as well as hourly paid leave, which are considered differently, because historically there was a different reason to grant them. So clients tend to consider vacation is a vacation. Is what, 20, 30, 40 days, whatever it is every year, right? That is vacation. Well, actually, there is also those hourly leave, paid leave that must be considered. Um, um, they accrue on an hourly basis instead of daily, and also they can be taken hourly as well, but on an hourly basis. But also they are subject to different rules. First of all, in many CBAs they do increase every X number of years until they reach a certain level, and also they can be paid out if unused the following year, which is actually not the case with the vacation. So there are some
So
different.
what's an example? No, because I haven't even heard of this myself, and it's quite interesting to understand. So let's say I'm an employee,
Yep.
um, and I'm hired locally in Italy. And it's great for you because, like you've got me a fraction of the cost, but you've got the talent. Um, but I want to take holiday. So I've got two options. I can either take like my just annual leave,
Mhm.
like holiday, but I'm not paid for that. Let's say I take 2 weeks, but I'm not paid in those 2 weeks. And that is separate to the kind of paid leave.
Yeah. So the
Because in the UK, for example, like typically, well, my previous company was like, I have 30 days of holiday, but
Mhm.
it's all paid. What's like a typical breakdown in Italy for like if I was looking to hire myself in Italy?
So in Italy, basically, again, it depends of the CBA, collective bargaining agreement, right? Let's say that we would apply the CBA of commerce for you, right? Which is the most used. In that case, by law, you have, well, actually, sorry, there is another example here for you how complicated it is to navigate the Italian labor law. So the CBA says, says that the employees have 26 days vacation minimum amount. So the minimum amount is 26 days. However, the CBA of Commerce take into consideration Monday to Saturday. So instead, if you actually work Monday to Friday, then these 26 becomes 22, right? So the contract says that the minimum vacation number of days in a given year is 22 days, and you cannot carry this forward. So I apologize, sorry, you cannot, you can carry them over, but you cannot get paid for the outstanding holidays, for example, in the following that you carry in the following year, unless you terminate the contract, unless the contract is terminated or a contract, ends naturally. Okay. Then on top of these 22 days, you have those hours, which we call ROL, roll, right? And those hours, again, taking into consideration the CBA of commerce, they work as following, right? You start with the first 2 years with an amount which is equal to 32 hours, if I'm not wrong, and then it becomes 64 hours year number 3, number 4, and then it reached the cap. Let's call it this way.
Hmm. But then but if I want to take, because if it's 104 hours, right, that's
Mhm.
about what, 10 working days or so.
Yeah, probably 11, yeah.
So then but if I want, like, year 5 in, I get 25 days plus 10 working days. If I
Correct.
want to, okay, okay, interesting.
Yep.
Yeah, see, I wasn't even aware of that. So
Yep. We
like the
had a
P,
client.
like, yeah, please.
So if I can give you this example also, because it helps us to better understand, right? So we had a client that it was a UK company actually. UK company that approached us was last year because they just needed some consultations. They already had a local provider in Italy, and this provider basically helped them to set up a representative office. Okay, so it's not a proper entity, it's sort of a light registration, which we facilitate as well. And and the provider was running the payroll and HR, sort of, right? Sort of. Long story short, this guy came to us, so the company came to us, the UK company came to us, was like, hey, we need to understand what's going on with our employee in Italy. And we had a couple of calls there, and we were able to answer all the questions, which was, made the client very happy. Long story short is that the other provider did not mention about this ROL, this hourly payment to them. And this employee, because was employed many years with a company, because she never took any um, ended up with hundreds of hours of paid leave, which is actually an hidden cost because it is a cost for a company.
Yeah,
It's
it
not
is,
you need
of
to pay
course.
them, whether
But then
you
it's
get.
like a legal right. So it's a
Yeah,
legal right for the person.
absolutely. So whether you terminate the contract, you need to pay them straight away, and it's a lot of money because also they're also subject to Social Security. Let's not forget this. So it's not just the amount that you see there, but also what you need to pay to the government. But also, even if you do want to let the employee take these holidays, is this still a cost because while she's taking this time off, it's not work. And when you have hundreds of hours, means weeks of vacation there to be taken. So that is also why I believe having a trusted partners is of extremely high value for the unaware foreign client.
The big PEO, big EOR businesses, can they help with this as well?
Not really. I mean, we have seen that there is. I just again, sorry to provide you a lot of examples, but
No, the examples are helpful because it
right?
gives context.
Exactly. So we have had this partner with whom we used to work in the past,
Hmm.
and basically they admitted it's like, guys, we are now trying for months and months to create a platform that fits the Italian needs because of these hours, right? So each CBA is different. Then you need to track the time, the length of service, the length of
Yeah.
seniority of the employee, and so on. So actually, as far as I know, but might be wrong, obviously, these PO providers that I know of, they are not ready to track this system in Italy.
Wow. And like, so do you need like a specific tracking system for it as well?
Yeah, we use actually
But
a
you guys do. So
yeah,
if I was looking to hire, you would do that for me as well.
yeah, correct. Of course, of course. We this is something also I would like to tell you, Peter. We don't have our own HR system, so it's not proprietary. But there was a decision that we made at the beginning because I strongly believe that you should do what you know best. You shouldn't be doing what you don't know, right? Or what you're not prepared for. So, and we are using one of the, I don't want to obviously mention this now, but we are using one of the two biggest, most known HR software tools in Italy. And they've been in the market for what, 40 years, 30 years, so they know exactly what to do. We just simply use their technology to run our business.
And you can just do exactly what you're really good at, which is
Yeah.
I'm always a fan of. You did mention earlier though that kind of at as you scale, maybe it makes sense to look at just hiring, like, let's say, a HR person, like locally or, or whatever's needed. At what kind of point do you think it makes sense for someone to maybe not use an EOR service provider like yourself and just look directly at the marketplace? Or can you still help those bigger firms looking to relocate or kind of expand into Italy?
Based on our experience, probably the threshold is about 4 employees. When you reach that kind of threshold, you have three and you're going for the fourth, or you have two, third, or you have the fourth going to the fifth employee, then probably doesn't really make sense anymore to use in your provider, unless there are other reasons which we need to address. Also, I wanted to share something that is particularly important for us, right? So for us, compliance is extremely important. And I remember the other day, very, very recently, right? It was probably 2 weeks ago. We had a client that came to us saying, "Hey, I want to hire, 15 employees with via Peoitaly your services." And then it's like, hang on, 15 employees is a lot of employees, right? Which another UR provider will be delighted to hear, so, right? It's a lot of business, a lot of money. We don't follow that kind of formamentis, right? The kind of procedure. We vet our clients. So the question is, how come you want to hire 15 employees without, instead of setting up an entity, will be much more convenient for you, will cost you much, much less money. Long story short is that we don't want our clients to bypass the local law, meaning that, as you know, Piero, there is, around the EUR industry, there is the spectrum. Sorry, there is something that we need to monitor very carefully, which is the permanent establishment risk, right? So the PE risk. So when a company operating in a country where it does not have an entity, this company needs to be extremely careful about the PE risk, the permanent establishment risk, right? If the authorities believe that you should open up an entity in the country and you don't, although you still operate in the country, then you might be subject to heavy fines as well, right? I'll give you this example, right? Let's say I have had a customer last year that approached us because they wanted to sell into the Italian market. So they were actually, I think, producing printing machines or something like that, right? And they wanted to hire 3 people in Italy to go and sell to the local stores, right? So what it means that you have somebody representing your company, in the local stores in Italy and signing agreements, right, on your behalf in Italy. That is certainly an indicator of PE, permanent establishment. So that means that you should actually open up an entity because you're operating in the country, generating an income in the country, right? And so obviously what it means that you should be paying corporate tax in the country, right? So I say no to this because I believe to this deal. So I lost this deal because I believe that in that case the company should have opened an entity, which by the way I offered the option, but they didn't want to, obviously, right? And in that case, accepting the kind of deal would have meant facilitate something that doesn't necessarily is compliant because maybe it's just to bypass the law, right? This is something that no EUR provider would ever tell you because they would just need to sell their business. But we want the best for our clients. That's what we want eventually. And it is my duty to advise the client on the risks and perhaps sometimes to say no if it's too risky for them and for us.
No, that makes sense. And so for that example, let's say they have been caught, which they might have been now. What are the kind of fines that they're like? What's the consequences for actually going against the book there?
Yeah, that answer, I don't have this answer, CB, because it does require a qualified accountant to answer this bit. But certainly it will be fines, which probably are going to be very high. Again, the requirement of paying to the Italian revenue system, whatever has been, undeclared and so on and so on. And actually, as far as I know, if you also go above a certain value in a given year that has not been declared to the revenue, there is also it's also considered a criminal charge. Yeah,
Wow.
in Italy. Yeah, it's serious.
Wow, I wasn't aware. I've actually got here, so you said advising your clients. I've got this salary calculator thing
Hmm.
on your website. Can you just
Yep.
walk me through that? Like why what is it?
Yep. This is one of our features, which, by the way, we are working on improving it. It gives the chance to both clients, or sorry, prospects, so companies, as well as employees, to add their data there. Well, the data, I mean like the desired, for example, net salary. And we would do a number of calculations, which could be gross to net. So from the gross salary, we would actually calculate the net salary, so the salary that the employee would pocket. Or we can do the net to gross, so vice versa. Sometimes we can also do, sorry, sometimes we are asked also to do the net to gross to cost, meaning, okay, starting from a net salary, how much would cost me, or vice versa. So we reverse engineer that. So cost to company, gross and net. And this is particularly useful, Piero, when we have cases where the EUR is actually is driven by the employee, right? So, for example, let's say an Italian person, not necessarily Italian, but an employee that is currently living and working in the UK or in Germany or in any other country that wants to move or wants to return to Italy, but then they at the same time they don't want this to be more expensive, this move to be more expensive to the client, okay, to the company. So what we do actually, we work on that kind of parameter, right? So what is the cost to the company as of now? And what do we need to do in order to keep this cost, right? So that means we need to work on the variables, which is the gross and therefore the net. And thanks to something called regime impatriati, which is a very, very attractive tax scheme for the people that actually moved to Italy. And actually, it's funny because there is a misconcept here, right? So regime impatriati, a lot of people believe that it's only for Italians that, left Italy and come back, but it's actually for everyone, even for non-EU nationals, right? So if you come to Italy, if you move your residence to Italy, you have up to 50% tax discount for up to 10 years or so. Now, the law recently changed, so I need to double check, but which is a huge incentive. So thanks to that, sometimes actually the move is really at a zero extra cost. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
no, because that makes sense. And I say that because I looked at actually relocating permanently for tax reasons to Italy, but the rule changed from because it was 90% in
It is
January
up
the
to 9.
1st, and it
Mhm,
changed this year. That is one question though, which is a concern, is
mhm.
in Italy, and I'm not sure if well, obviously but other people watching this might not know, but how do I say it? Government changes a lot in Italy, right? In
Yep.
terms of like a political landscape, it's quite different. Let's say somewhere like Switzerland or wherever else, or maybe it's much more established and like drastic changes don't happen as much. Um, what do you kind of say to that? Because isn't that like a concern if I'm looking to hire in Italy?
Yeah. So it is and it is not, Pedro. So I have actually another example for you. We just talking about the regime impatriati, this very nice attractive tax regime. When we heard that the tax regime could have been changed as of January this year, January 2024, we already started to speak with our potential prospects that showed an interest in hiring somebody that was moving to Italy, and also we started to reach out to the candidates that have been previously in touch with us, and so on and so on. So we were able to tell them, hey, if you're still interested, move on, do it quicker. And that's our added value because we live in this country, because we operate in this country. Sometimes we actually contribute to some law changes. We have our own connections. So we did actually suggest a couple of changes which didn't pass, but still we tried. Um, so because we are in the country, we know that something might come up soon, and we advise the shareholders or whatever is interested in the right time. To go back to your question, yes, the political instability is a thing in Italy, and there is nothing we can do. Really, nothing we can do. What we can do is that again, try to predict what the future can bring, and act accordingly.
I find it really interesting this whole move to Italy. Obviously, being Italian myself, right? Like I didn't even know all of these things. Like one thing that kind of shocked me, which you already touched on, is I mean I've got friends. I live in London, right? And I've got friends who, let's say banking. So I've got investment banking friends here who their first year out of uni, they probably makes £80,000,
Mhm.
75,000, £80,000. And then I've got people who I know in Italy who work the exact same hours, like first thing in the morning till midnight, 1 a.m., 2 a.m., 3 a.m., right? Just on repeat, working really hard, probably just as smart for sure. Um, and they're paid like 40,000, 45,000, 50,000 euros, which is like £38,000. Um, which to me just like is kind of shocking that there's such a like wide divide. Um, how long, like, do you think this will catch up?
Not anytime soon. This is
Like
really,
I find it quite interesting. Like, why do you think it's because even France has higher salaries? Maybe this is
yeah,
more like a political, geopolitical one, but
yeah.
why do you think it's kind of so far behind in terms of salaries?
First of all, in Italy, the unions and the government, um, the political establishment in general of the past, not much now, made it very, very difficult the negotiation of salaries at the one-to-one level. So the CBAs are in place in Italy to the collective bargaining agreements, right, to define the frame, okay, and specify what you can do, what you cannot do, right? And a big part of these rules are around minimum salaries. Here. So what it means that, okay, so for each specific job, there is a level, and for each specific level, there is a salary established, right? As a matter of fact, actually, I mean, don't get me wrong, salaries are negotiable, but you would be surprised when you talk to Italian, even, like people that have been working, senior enough people tell you, what do you mean you can negotiate the salary? They don't know this. The reason why they don't know is because we have been told, culturally, we have been told since we were kids that your salary is based on the CBA on the level. CBA and level, CBA and level, and that's it. You can negotiate that. Right? You cannot negotiate that. And that's unfortunately something that you carry on and on culture, as you said, right? So you have those CBAs that actually not only, and so they end up actually not only establishing the minimum, but also the maximum salary, right? It's absurd, right? So here's one of the, for example,
Wait,
reasons
so
why.
there's still, is this still in place? So there's
Oh
a
yeah.
minimum salary and there's a maximum as well.
Well, it's not minimum, it's not maximum, it's this salary. And actually the employee, so it's
So give
again,
me an example. Let's say I'm like a consulting firm.
yeah. So you're a consulting firm, and then you wanna employ a consultant, and then you go to the relevant CBA and say, okay, what this consultant is supposed to do for me, this and that. Good. So this consultant would fall under this category provided the CBA. Good. So how much do I give them? The salary is given by the CBA, and there is no space for negotiation. The negotiation is left to the extremely senior people, whereas in other countries the negotiation is everywhere, also for more junior people, right? So you offer the salary you don't like, you ask for a little bit more, and so on and so on. And that is very unusual in Italy, right? Also, there are other reasons why the salaries tend to be lower, because in Italy there is we have probably one of the highest employer's cost. For each employee, the employer's costs are rather high, and the spread is the highest in Europe, unfortunately. By spread, I mean
What the company pays versus what the client get or what the employee gets.
exactly, is the highest in Europe, unfortunately. I know that the government is currently working very actively on reducing this gap, and they already took a couple of measures to make this possible, but it's still one of the highest.
Hmm,
Mhm.
interesting. But you still like, but even with that in consideration, does it work out to be cheaper? Because like when I think about like just the investment banking example, for
Yep.
instance,
Oh,
it's like
absolutely.
half the price, right?
Overall it is cheaper. Overall it is cheaper. Also, this is something I also wanted to share with you, Peter. These other ER providers would simply tell you that, oh yeah, the employer's costs are roughly 40% overall, and that's it, right? You look at this like 40%. This is insane. What they don't tell you is that part of this 40% is what we call TFR, trattamento di fine rapporto, which is probably translated as end of service allowance, which is literally an extra salary that every year, well, on a monthly basis, but it's work out to be one salary. Every month we take this aside, is actually a cost to the company, but is not properly social security costs, because it's not going to the government, it's not going to the public healthcare, is actually staying within the company. It is property of the employee, and the employees would get this at the end of the employment contract, whether because they resign or they are terminated, doesn't matter. This is something, it's a notice period, right? But on top of that, you have trattamento di fine rapporto, TFR, which is consider that as as actually that was the reason why they put it there, a contribution to your pension on top of what is already provided by the state, right? So in fact, the TFR is also taxed at a much lower rate than your salary whenever you get it. So the reason why I'm mentioning this to you, Peter, is because I want clients to be aware of this, and that is the reason why the employer's costs are that high in Italy. But also, we have personally helped clients to negotiate the salary, because instead of leaving the clients at negotiating salaries without not knowing where this is ending, right? What is ending, like oh yeah, the worker asked me for 200K, with these, very senior workers, and the clients will be like, oh, 200K, okay, it work out to be roughly 35% extra in my country. Yes, I accept. But then, they come to us and they're like, oh gosh, why is it costing me so much? Instead, if we can actually participate in this negotiation phase, not as a direct actor, right, but indirect actor, we are supporting it. We can tell, hey, be mindful of those type of costs, right? And we did actually with one German client that we recently onboarded, and they really appreciated our help.
Okay, so you also help with quite senior hires in terms of an advisory perspective.
Exactly, and with this kind of employees, we can also offer benefits that no other providers can in Italy, which is company car. We can provide a leased company car. We can provide a credit card. We can provide mobile phones. We can provide SIM card. We can provide a lot of things that other providers cannot provide.
Oh, okay, yeah, I had no idea. I mean, one thing that I also would like to understand is there's a perception that, like, obviously there's all these costs when you hire someone in Italy, even though net it works out to be cheaper. How does it look like if, let's say you hire someone and you've taken that risk and they don't seem to be performing? Is that quite difficult to get rid of someone, and do you help in that process as well?
That is a very, very good question. So under the labor leasing structure, it is much easier to terminate the employee where there is a reason. Where there is a reason, obviously, right? Not just terminating an employee for no reasons, but where there is a reason, and where uh, our client can prove the reasons behind somebody not performing well and so on, then the offboarding process, let's call it this way, is much easier and can be controlled. With providers, with your providers that don't have a license, then is you're literally left at the mercy of the employee. The employee can do whatever they want, and they can ask whatever they want to be let go. An example could be very much like that you can end up paying an equivalent of 36 months, so 3 years of a salary, to ask somebody to leave, even though if this person was not performing or so on and so on. Unfortunately, the setup that you choose is extremely important and can bring a lot of consequences on top of what we were discussing at the beginning of the call, right?
Yeah. So, but those 36 months, do they still work for you?
No,
So you
because
just have to pay them for 3 years, but they don't pay, but they're not
well, you
working.
pay a lump sum.
Okay, fine. But that's an expensive cost if you're not prepared for that. And you help mitigate that.
Oh, absolutely. I wouldn't otherwise do this job. I wouldn't be in this business otherwise. I couldn't carry this risk. I couldn't share this risk with the client. No, no. But under the labor leasing license, it's completely different. It can be controlled, and you'll be looking at um, a severance around probably 3 to 4 months worth of salary to let somebody go with a reason, of course. There must be always a reason.
Yeah. Wow.
Mhm.
Wow. Yeah, that's a big difference, right? That's like 10%, 10% of the cost.
And I'm actually sorry that many clients they come to us after perhaps they've had bad experiences, or sometimes they are comparing our solutions with others. They are like, oh yeah, the other provider is a bit cheaper and so on, but they are unaware of the potential consequences that choosing a non-licensed provider can have.
Mm.
And if you want, Piero, I can even show you how to check if a provider is
Yeah,
licensed.
how would you check? How would you check?
Okay, so it's basically myampel.ampel.gov.it/albi dash informatici slash. So you just simply go on Google and type ANPAL, so
Sure.
ANPAL,
ANPAL.
Albi Informatici. And it brings you to this page. You go on Consultazione Albo, and all you need to do, okay, you don't need all these details. All you need to do is just to type the company name, okay, and click on filter, so filtra. And basically what you will see the licenses that this company has, right? What you need to be careful, what you need to, you need to pay attention on somministrazione. That is the word for leasing, so labor leasing. You can ignore ricerca e selezione, which is actually the other license, for example, we have in this case for the to select people, basically, exactly. Um, sourcing candidates, right? But this is the one that you need to look for, right? To look for
Okay, cool.
somministrazione. And if no, let me just put something that is Nike, for example. Nike doesn't do a labor leasing, right? So Nike, of course, will not be here.
Okay,
So what I'm saying to you is that you type the name of the company, you click filter.
it
If
will
it's
come up.
not here, it means they do not have a license. So please, please stay away.
Does this work like for even like those global EOR firms?
Oh yeah, they must have a license to operate in Italy. So
Okay.
that is the number one advice I always give to our prospects.